morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be landing. I'm landing in the morning right now. So I'm coming in to do an intro and an outro for this video because sometimes you got to do them both at the same time. Yesterday I got the video kind of put together as everything was finishing up, and I thought I'd give you just quickly the cliff notes. So every year for the last couple of years, Jessica from the Three Rivers, it's either Three Rivers or Three Rivers Homestead, I'll link it down below, has been doing a challenge called Every Bit Counts Challenge. And basically the idea is that every day during August, you put something up. It doesn't have to be something you've grown. You could get some blueberries from the farmer's market and freeze a pint of blueberries. You could make some jam from plums that you got at a store. You could make an extra meal when you cook dinner and put one in the freezer. So the idea is just that you can see the effects that putting something up every single day, it doesn't have to be these great grandiose canning days. It certainly can be, but it doesn't have to. So each year for the last couple of years, I participated on Instagram, making a daily post. I'm not really engaging with social media like that anymore. I like having YouTube as a way to just sort of make a video, catch a moment in time, say this is what's going on. So I thought I would kind of wrap up what this week has been as far as preserving, and then I'll do it each week during August and maybe even September if it proves to be fun. So I thought I'd give you the rundown, and there might be more in the video that I forgot, but I was able to get through 7 quarts of corn for the freezer, 11 pints of corn canned, 18 pints of beans canned, 3 quarts of kohlrabi fermented, 96 ounces of whole peas that I sprouted and then cooked and then got into those plastic containers, Reditainers for the freezer, 1 quart of spring onions all cut up into the baggie into the freezer. I made more onion powder using spring onion tops and some onion tops. I made more celery powder using celery tops. Then I got through the onions and the garlic. So the onions have been harvested, they are drying. I have onions all over the house as well. And then the garlic came off the drying rack and I went through and made it all clean and pretty. I think this video is going to end abruptly because my camera stopped working, and so I'll be peeling garlic and then the video will be over and I'll say goodbye. Straw flowers and echinacea. So I've been picking straw flowers for my wreath that I want to make, and I've been picking a lot of echinacea to dry for medicine. Oh, and I forgot to put on here also 1 pint of pesto, which you'll see in the video. All right, well, there might be other things, but that's kind of the rundown. So without further ado, we shall enter our video. And a huge, huge thank you to Jessica. I just appreciate this challenge so much, and I appreciate the community that comes in around it. And I just love that, having that, that like personal accountability. Like, I can do this. If I do a little bit every day, I can do this. I can make a huge impact on what goes in my freezer and my pantry of what I've stored up for the winter. So thank you. Thank you for the invitation. So this is my kohlrabi harvest, the entire kohlrabi harvest. It's just amazing. It's being fermented. It's going to be delicious. Kind of chaos right now, especially when you have kittens who won't leave your clean, sanitized things alone. I've got 3 containers full of whole sprouted peas. These were dried peas that I just happened to find. I sprouted them, I cooked them, and then they're going to be frozen in their broth. Then for the first time, I pressure canned beans, and I clearly went completely wrong. So I had already pre-soaked them before I measured them out into the jars, but I used the dried bean measurement for putting them in the jars. So clearly I could have done double that. And then my pressure canner was being kind of weird and I wasn't believing it. There was like a few minutes that just weren't right. So I added another 15 minutes to these, and the kidney beans are just mush. And I think the black beans are fine. But again, like it's mostly bean water. So that, you know, live and learn. That was my first time. I don't expect to get it right the first time. I've been bringing in all of the salad onions, but these are gorgeous. They're gonna kind of dry up here, but I'm using them fresh as much as possible and eating them either raw or lightly sauteed in an omelet. I've got one bunch hanging here on my cabinet, and then you can see the table is filling up mightily. I have another bunch hanging up over here on my herb drying rack. It really needs to be cleared off. The mullein, it's time to get the mullein into jars. It's time to get the yarrow into jars. Probably should get the chamomile into jars, but it looks so pretty that I kind of don't have the heart to do that. There's a random onion there. I've got yarrow hanging all over, straw flowers drying, tomatoes ripening. So this is today's project. Part of today's project will be getting a bunch of tomatoes in the food dehydrator. Oh, I've got more onions here too. This one lost its stem, so that can't be dried. So all these are gonna go do a little dehydrating action, and then the next round I will probably roast, and then we'll do some fermented salsa as well. All the straw flowers for my wreath, drying beautifully. I've got some echinacea. Hard to see that with the light behind. There's the echinacea, it looks gorgeous. And that will be for medicine. The yarrow here is for the wreath. The yarrow over here is for medicine. And we've got like the mullein, and I mean, it's just, there's so much. I need like 20 of these drying racks for this time of year. We've got the poppy seed rattles. Those will go in the wreath as well. I wish I had more of those, but I had a tough time with the poppies. They just kept falling over and like disappearing into the ground. What is this? Oh, this is bee balm. That's bee balm. That's mullein. I had to mark the clary sage leaves. I don't yet know what I'm gonna do with them, but I wanted to mark them so I didn't confuse them with anything else. Those are not my sweet potatoes. Those are just leftover sweet potatoes. I just wasn't thinking I was canning many tomatoes this year. Chloe just requested pizza sauce. And I'm like, I didn't really grow tomatoes for that because we had done so much canning last year. I was thinking we'd do mostly dehydrating, fresh eating, salsa, and roasting. So I did a lot of small tomatoes, but I told her I will find a way to make pizza sauce. So this is the honey, and it has sage, thyme, and rosemary. And each day I will change how it sits on the bowl that it's in. So today it's going to be flipped over like this. Tomorrow it'll be flipped over like this. I do need to top it off with a little bit more honey, so it's just kind of right up. I don't want a ton of airspace in there. You don't want too much airspace because you do want those herbs submerged. So this will sit, and then this will be our throat medicine in the winter. Another thing I made was I made a jar of pesto for a potato salad that we had when guests came over. Pesto potato salad. It was really, really good. New potatoes, really, really delicious. This is using sorrel and tatsoi. The tatsoi was getting eaten by bugs, and it's just, we were in a heat wave. There's no way that was going to keep growing. So that came out, and then I just cut the sorrel down. This is like the third flush of the sorrel. It is a perennial, so if you get that in your garden, you will have a guaranteed green that grows back. I love it. It has a lemony flavor, so you don't actually need to add too much lemon to your pesto, but it is delicious. So that's what this is, and so this will probably go and be popped in the freezer. I also keep adding to my green onion powder. So this got another round of onion tops from some spring onions, the overwintered spring onions that I'm still harvesting. So I imagine this jar could be full by the time that August is done. So I just keep adding to that. And then the other thing I'm doing is drying celery leaves. And this one's actually a combination of celery leaves from last year and chives. that I just went ahead and just put in the blender and powdered that up. And then I've been dehydrating celery and celery leaves to make a celery powder. So this is about half the corn from the 6 dozen ears of corn. So I'm guessing this is about 3 dozen right here. Fills up this entire pot. I've got water in here, salt, some coconut sugar. Crystal in her book Freeze Fresh uses butter, but I am using avocado oil because I'm not able to handle dairy. At least not at this point in my life. Isn't that gorgeous? Then I'm going to cook this for a little bit and then I'll cool it and I'll get it into freezer bags and I will finally have this corn project done because I feel like it's been going on forever. All right, so I've got the corn cooling that has the sugar, salt, and oil on it that was boiled. Then I have the rest of the corn. This is the last of it, and I'm going to actually just freeze it raw because you can. It's fine. And then I'm going to process 10 jars of corn along with 4 jars of beans. I'll be using the bean time, which is 1 hour, 25 minutes for the pints. And even though the corn is actually 55 minutes, creamed corn is 1 hour 25, I do believe, the same as the beans. So I'm just going to process it like it was creamed corn. These corns will be used for corn chowder, so it's probably perfect that I cook them a little extra anyway. So that's going in the pressure canner. And then I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, of the corn tunnel. I just need this corn out of my refrigerator. Okay, so my canner is loaded. I am not going to turn it on right now because when you pressure can, you have to be present. You can't just set an alarm and go out. This isn't all American. I'll be listening for the jiggle. This is not an instructional video. This is just inspiration. So I'm not going to be talking about how to pressure can, but basically you just got to be there. So I'm going to go out and finish the last 2 things outside, which are onions and garlic. They are swapping places. And then when I need a break, I'll come in and make lunch and do the canning. There was so many kid things to do yesterday that I ended up being up till after midnight so that I could take the cans out of the pressure canner. I am not making that mistake today because I wake up early and I'm like sleepwalking. So I am doing my pressure canning before dinner from now on. All right, I've got my 1 bag filled with raw corn. This will probably take a while to cool down, but I've got my bags ready. I've got my tape ready. You want to tape the bags before you put the hot stuff in or before they're frozen. The tape will stick really well if you just do it first. I've tried to stick the tape on to something that's frozen already, and the tape is like, what are you talking about? It probably would stick to something hot, but you just go ahead and get it done first. So I decided to pull half the onions this morning. I'm gonna do the other half today. I'm gonna show you what happened. My onions this year are huge, you guys. They are huge. I don't know why the chicken are freaking out. But this is what started to happen. So everything was really dry, and then we started to get some rain. And they started to split because they're so big. So I decided probably should just get these out. They're not all huge. Like I do have some smaller ones, but like last year, this was the biggest size onion I grew. So I'm thrilled. And I'm just laying them out in the sun for a minute, but I'm gonna take the garlic off of the drying rack and then I'll replace them with these onions. I mean, I just can't believe the size of these things. They're enormous. See, this one split too. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to dry the ones that split. So those will probably just end up being soup starters. Cause that's not gonna dry. So my 2 biggest onions actually split. So I was like, I gotta get these guys out of the ground. But the tops weren't even falling over. Like they were ready to be harvested. We just got this like a surprise rain. We weren't expecting it because it's been so dry, but I am so pleased with the onions this year. So this is the first row where the onions were, and you can see they are all gone, plucked out this morning. And then this is the second row, of the onions, and I ended up pushing down the tops just to kind of stop the growing process. But we are due for more rain, so I'm absolutely getting these out of the ground. Next year I want to grow more red. You want to make sure it's loosened from the ground rather than pulling from the stem, because you need the stem intact if you're planning to dry these. And that's it. That's all you do. And then I'm gonna stick it on the drying rack. Beautiful onion. So once I get this row harvested, looks like I have some chard, some peppers, this incredible fennel that's growing tall that I'm using for seed, more peppers, and then at the end here I have a hollyhock, and some bee balm. But other than that, it will be ready for planting. And I had planned to get my brassicas in these first 2 rows. And what's happening is, because we're in a heat wave, just the timing of everything is off a little bit. So I'm trying to get these brassicas to hold off for 2 more days until the heat wave breaks and we get some rain. You can see my beets and carrots are doing really well. It's almost time for a garden tour, so things will be different again. But we did get a little tiny bit of rain, so things are looking better than they were, but we're still in a drought. Okay, so let's stand back and see the beautiful onion harvest. So this obviously doesn't include the ones that are in the house, which is, the ones in the house, we'll be eating off of those for a very long time before we even touch these. But I will be bringing some of the red onions in because Dave and I love raw red onion. Next year I'd like to have much more of the red onion. I'm not sure what happened. I put the rest of the red onions in one of the rows that just isn't growing, so we probably would have triple this amount. It just didn't work. That row just grows nothing. So that was a bummer, but this is incredible harvest, so nothing to be sad about. I've got to get these drying before I can actually water the poor little vegetables that are like, please plant me, and I can't plant you. I tried planting the cauliflower. I put in 21 cauliflower plants, and only like 6 of them are bouncing back just because of this heat. So not worth it to lose the plants. I just got to keep them alive in these little containers for 2 more days, and then they can be planted. I just can't believe how big. These are so big. I suppose the very last preservation from this week has been the squash. This is a gorgeous blue Hubbard. I only really have one that grew. The squash bugs have been devastating this year. Last year I had so many squash, and this year I am just lucky that this one plant produced an incredible amount. Either the chicken or something started to eat them, and then the squash bugs were literally all over them. So I have picked them early, and they've been curing all this week just in the sunroom where it does get sun and shade, and they have brightened up considerably. I don't know that they all will, and because of the squash bugs, I have no idea how well they will actually last, how long they will last. But if they start to turn, then I'll just cook them up, freeze them, and it'll be no big deal. Okay, you guys, I'm out here trimming the first batch of garlic, and it's looking pretty good. And I just found one that looked really weird, and I thought it was bad, so I started to open it up. It is literally one gigantic clove of garlic. This entire thing is just one. You kind of almost want to plant that and see what you would get, don't you? That is wild. So I already peeled it, so I can't save it, but yeah, I don't know what to say to that. So if you've never trimmed garlic, basically this is what you've got when you pull it from the ground, this huge long stalk, and then this has been drying, and then you come in and you cut it about here, and then you trim the little hairs. I'm just using my knife and this is what you get at the end. This is hard neck garlic, meaning this is hard. I can't push on it. Soft neck garlic is the garlic you see braided. Like if you go to a restaurant, you see braided garlic. That's soft neck. Next year, I'm growing soft neck just because I want braided garlic hanging in my house. I have to say that my absolute favorite part of gardening, and there are so many parts, but my favorite part is the harvest. And I particularly love the busy work. So taking 100 and however many heads of garlic and, you know, sitting here and cleaning them off and doing this one by one. Ooh, wow. Until the work is done. It is so satisfying to me. The other thing that I love is a big bag. The other thing that I love is beans, shelling dried beans. And I did not grow as many this year because my father gifted my sister and I with Rancho Gordo beans, like a lot of them. And my sister doesn't really do dried beans. I might actually can some for her because she gave me all of her beans. And it just felt like, ooh, I don't think I could have any more beans. Beans don't last forever. Like you can still plant them, but a bean that is like 3 years old is gonna be really tough when you cook it. And so, you know, even though it's a great dried food, and you still can always eat it, it just may not be as pleasant to eat as it might be when it's fresh. So I had all those beans and I just felt like, yeah, I can't justify filling my garden up with more dried beans. I still have a ton from last year, and so I will probably plant a lot of those, and then I have something else planned that I'm not going to talk about quite yet, but I have other plans too. Anyway, this is my favorite part. I love the busy work. I love the handwork, shucking corn. You know, it's just like, I love the canning process. I love to can. I don't know. I just think this part of it, preserving the harvest, is incredibly gratifying. And, you know, I'm not a knit. I don't knit. I don't really sew. And so this kind of work for my hands is probably similar to that, I would have to imagine. You know, I cook and I preserve and I do a lot of things around the house, but I'm definitely not, I never really learned those skills. Something that I definitely would appreciate learning in this second half of my life. But for now, I'm just sticking with what I do best, and that is just sitting here. Oh, shelling peas, that's the other one. I love shelling peas. I know people are like, oh my God, that is just like the worst thing ever. I think it's the best thing ever. Let me know if you have any questions. This is really fun for me. I love this part of the harvest. I know that for some people this feels like work. This feels like the best kind of work I could possibly ever do. So I do love it, and I'm happy to lend support if you need some. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.